Well, I've got it back together. Unfortunately, there seems to be as many problems now as there was before, which is disappointing. I was hoping I'd get the mechanism running properly at least, so that and the fluorescent display, so that I could at least move on from there. But no, I'm afraid not. We can turn it on, and it needs a new capstan belt. Briefly, the counter's not working. Very few of the buttons are doing anything. If we go fast forward, you've got to hold it in. Same with rewind. You've got to hold it in and play. It's wanting to start playing, but it doesn't. The main buttons actually do their job. They seem to be operative, which is good, but the mechanism isn't following suit. And it could well be that with the playing that I haven't put something back together right, or the fact that they are the old belts, it's still not working properly. And that may even be why the counter isn't working, for all I know. The loose belt that's in there may be just not even turning. But the problem is to work on the mechanism again, I have to take it out. But if I want to try and diagnose what's going on mechanically, I need to set it out separately and have all of this still connected. That is quite a difficult thing, because the leads for the mechanism aren't long enough. They're quite short. They're only like that long. They only just make it onto the bottom board. So if I want to look at this mechanism outside, I need to extend those leads somehow. That usually means putting in an inline connector, or trying to find the same connectors that are used for the machine. And I'm familiar with most connectors, but trying to determine exactly what sort they are is not an easy job. There's just so many different makes and manufacturers and so on. It's not going to be easy. It would be easier just to put in an inline connector of my own, and I could make it as long as I like then. But it does mean that that inline connection would be there permanently, unless when it's all finally fixed, I just resolder them with inline heat shrink or something. Yeah, that's possible. The other thing is the fluorescent display is still misbehaving, even though I've put in mostly new components. Very frustrating. I'm not getting audio through the beast. The audio gets into the line input and up to the display, but with source selected, it's not getting through to the output. So that's also disappointing. There is so much wrong with this. It's almost difficult to know where to begin. But once again, the two major things, turn it off now, two major things are why this mechanism is not playing properly. You have to hold down the rewind and fast forward, or the play for that matter. It means that perhaps the counter or take movement counter, wherever it is not operating, and so it just says, oh, I'm stopped, therefore I'll turn off. Maybe. So that and the display, so basically the same problems as before, even though I've spent quite a bit of time repairing the front panel, replacing the idler tyre, and greasing and oiling and checking the motors on the mechanism, all to no avail so far. I suspect I'm going to have to wait for another belt kit, so not sure that there's any point in trying to get into that at the moment. Without a proper belt kit, maybe it's not worthwhile even having a look at. And in the meantime, I can think about how I can extend the cabling from it to the machine so that I can set it outside. Well, I've gone away and had a cup of tea and collected my thoughts again about this, and anyway, I thought I'd just spend a few more minutes on it, and I realised I didn't have the output connected to the amp, so I wasn't actually hearing anything out of it, so I did that, and anyway, it's improving. I'll tell you why. First off, the display, no, it's not behaving, but I did adjust the oscillator on it to as close as to 40.8 kilohertz that I could, which is what it's meant to be. So I mean, it's only got two things coming to it: the power supply, that one, and the feed from the audio board, one of those vertical boards there, and that is just a varying DC level. So whatever is wrong with this display, it is within the display, and hopefully it will sort itself out eventually when I finished swapping out all the components. As I said, there's a couple that I still haven't done yet, and I thought that might have, what I did might have done the trick. The faulty transistor, two faulty transistors, capacitor, and the other two caps, but replacing those hasn't fixed it, so something else. Anyway, I thought I'd just briefly try, now that I got audio output out of the machine, I thought I'd just see what happens. Now, initially, I'll show you that. Go to source. That's output and the input. So the audio is getting through, and I thought, oh, okay, well, I wonder if it'll play. So let's press play, and there is actually sound coming out. So if I hold down the play button, it's sort of wanting to work, but something's not quite right. So I actually think I said I would leave the mechanism till later and do this first, but I think I actually might get back to having a look at the mechanism and see what I did wrong, because if I can get it to play and hold it, then I think we might be starting to get somewhere. The computing side of it still doesn't work, but you know, who knows. As I said, if I hold down fast forward, it actually works. If I hold down rewind, it actually works, but the moment I let go, it stops. So that could be related to play not holding either. It only works for a second and then stops. So so the countering system for making sure that it continues to run is not working. That's my suspicion. So all the little optocouplers and so on that are in there, I need to make sure that they're actually working. The capstan belt it's running at the moment, but it's way off to the side. It's not sitting properly, but well enough for it to run. So that's good enough. So I'm going to somehow pull it all apart again. It seems with cassette decks I'm always pulling them apart for the umpteenth time. Always. Just seems to happen. You forget this, forget that, or something doesn't work, or there's always something. So that's just how these machines, any machine is like. It's very difficult to always be able to fix the mechanism on the first go. It'll be interesting to see what I did wrong. This fluorescent display, I'm just going to actually disconnect it. It's a totally separate identity. It doesn't need to be in there for it to work at all. As I say, it's only a DC supply going to it and a DC up and down signal from one of the audio boards. There's no audio pass through or anything like that, so I shall disconnect that. All right, I'll get back to you. Well, something I should have checked before I put this mechanism back in place. I thought they were working, but I'm mistaken, because the shut-off light, which sits in here, which on other machines is the counter, but not on this one. It's a little light and an opto, and when it stops moving, it's meant to shut it off. Anyway, that light isn't working, and the counter, which sits up in here and runs off the supply hub, it also has the same type of little 12 volt 25 milliamp globe, and it's also not working, so I have to change a couple of globes. So that could explain why the play mechanism, and even the rewind for that matter, isn't working. So I've got to see if I actually bought enough globes. I hope I did. I'll get back. Right. I'm doing a small stock take on where we are with this 1000. I'm going to go over the things that I feel still need to be done. First off, replacing the polyprop capacitors and the power supply electrolytic capacitors, which I do have now. That will be put on hold until near the end, because I don't want to upset anything while I'm working on everything else. One at a time is how one should fix faults, not do everything at once and then have to try and figure out, if you have more than one or two faults, as to what caused them. So that will be left till probably the last thing I do. Next, the counter display, the 4 7-segment LEDs, which are just here. While it's counting, due to the new lamp in the counter assembly, which is just there. That's working, but the first and second segment don't seem to be working properly. That's the thousandth and the hundreds segments aren't working properly, in my opinion. I would have thought they should be 2 zeros, but we've got a dash and nothing. The third and fourth segment actually seem to work, which is good. So things are counting, but for some reason the display isn't showing it properly. Now, what could be causing that? Well, I hope it's not the display itself, because that could be really awkward to find a replacement. And if it comes to that in the end, unless I can find a second-hand one, another one, I'm leaving it. And the owner will have to put up with it. But if they eventually find a second-hand one, then well and good, we can change it. But I'm hoping that it's simply some circuit fault that's preventing it from counting properly, displaying the count properly. It counts up and down, so the counter sensor assembly, I imagine, is working okay, which is, it's a little light, and two sensors offset with each other, and depending on the direction, the phase relationship is such that it knows which direction it's going. So yeah, it's a suitable way of doing it. Right, next is the fluorescent display module, which is this. It's still not working properly, even though I've replaced most of the chips and the faulty transistors and capacitors. So at this moment in time, I don't know what's wrong with it. I've adjusted the oscillator to be 40.88 or close to it kilohertz, so that's working, but it's still not properly displaying as a VU meter should. There are a couple of ICs that I didn't get, or I did get, but they were the wrong sort. So I think I'll just have to wait until I reorder those ICs and try and get the right ones. For some reason, even though they were the same number, they ended up being 14 or 16 pin chips instead of 8 pin. And I'm going, what? But obviously there's a bit of my confusion as to how to properly order them and to make sure I had the right ones. Anyway, I'll have to reorder a couple of little chips before I finally come to the conclusion that I don't know what's wrong with it. So, and it's not preventing the rest of the machine from working. It's just the display. So that one is also put on hold. Next, the audio in and out seems to be working okay. So the slider controls are working. That's good. The audio in out is working. That's good. So we're getting somewhere. Now the computer side of stuff, when it starts up, all the different lights show different positions on the numbers. The computer has a whole series of numbers from left to right, which show what position in the alignment or adjustment or calibration sequence it is in, and that's not doing anything meaningful. So, but once again, I can't really start to investigate that until I have the rest of it working. Now we're getting to the final crux of the problems at the moment. I did replace the globe for the auto stop sensor. It's a little tiny 12-volt globe. I replaced the globe for the counter, which is in the top on the supply hub, so that made the thing actually be able to go into play mode, which is nice. Now what's happening is that I think there's a bit of either dried out grease or some other mechanical issue whereby when you first press play you hear this really fast speed up of audio until the pinch roller hits the capstan properly. So either there's a bit of dried up grease in the whole assembly that goes up into the cassette, or the pinch roller itself is not properly grasping the capstan. And it could be both of them too, for that matter. In fact, it probably might be both, because if one of them was working, then yes, you wouldn't get that sudden speed up. So my guess is probably some dried up grease, which I didn't want to attack in the first place, because it means really getting into this whole head assembly, and I didn't want to muck up any of the adjustments or anything, but it looks as though I'm going to have to. So that will need to be looked at. And at the same time, I know that it needs new belts. These are old belts, and the belt kit that came with the machine that was meant to be new turned out to be the wrong kit. So I can't do anything until I order a new belt kit. And this is especially true of the capstan belt. I put the old one back in and it just will not sit properly on the motor drive. It just moves side to side, and if it's this side it makes a terrible noise and it's fast, and if it goes the other way towards the motor, it's rubbing on the metal plate and running fast. But either way, it's rubbing the edge against something, which is probably the only reason why it's not flying off. But at least at the moment, with it flying towards the motor, it's nice and quiet. But because it's sitting on the edge of the motor pulley, it's slightly larger diameter, and that means that it's actually running a bit faster than it should, and when you play a tape you can hear it's running fast. So there's no point in adjusting the motor speed until we get a good belt that sits properly in the center of the pulley on the capstan motor. So I did change the idler tire, so at least that part of it is working quite nicely. And it's certainly a challenge. Certainly a challenge. I just wish I had more time. Alright, that's good. Alright, let's go. Yeah, for some reason it locked onto the cassette. So that should go like that. Turn it back off. Yeah. Somehow it had been locked into the play position or something. Alright.